Today is going to be the first iteration of the Windwalker kiting guides. Now I figured that it would be a good idea to make an overall guide before I go into the specific arenas. This is just going to be little tips that apply in every situation which are going to be helpful overall. So one of the most important things is pretty obvious, it's just keeping your slow up. Keeping your slow up on your target just means that you can get away from them quicker, takes them longer to get to you, buys you more time to heal yourself and recuperate. A couple of tips about disable: because it refreshes off melee attacks, when you sap someone, it will refresh disable on the target. And it's actually really helpful because if your disable's got, let's say, 1 second left on the target, your paralysis is off DR and it's off cooldown, you can sap them, it'll refresh disable without you needing to go up to them and refresh it yourself. So that's really helpful. Next thing to keep in mind is to not overuse your mobility. Let's just say that you're fighting someone over here at this ramp and you decide that you need to run. Let's just say that you sap him, that gives you 4 seconds to run away. What you should do, if you have access to Serpent Kick, is this. Now you're at the other side of the bridge, you're fusing up, you're healing. What you shouldn't do is do the exact same thing. Sap your target, gives you 4 seconds to get away. You got Serpent Kick up, don't do this. The difference between those two demonstrations was, in the first one I jumped at the end of my Serpent Kick, so I didn't have to roll to the pillar at the end. The last demonstration, I didn't jump, so I had to use another roll, which could mean that when he gets up to me, I've got less mobility to use. He might catch me because I don't have that extra roll. So save mobility when you can. Just minimizing where you use your rolls is oftentimes the difference between you dying and not dying, so keep that in mind. Next thing is to always run around pillars, but staying as close to the pillar as you possibly can. If you're running around pillars like this, then you're having to move more. It's taking you longer to get around the pillar. If you stay as close to the pillar as you can, you're getting around the corners faster, you're getting out of line of sight faster, and because you're traveling less distance, you are moving faster than the other person on top of you having that 10% movement speed. So it makes it even harder for them to catch you. So the closer you run to the pillars, the easier it is to get away from people. Next thing to keep in mind is always roll towards the corners of pillars when you're trying to run, as well as chase people. But for this purpose, let's just say that you're fighting a DK right here, and you wanted to roll towards this corner. Now of course Blade's Edge Arena isn't like this on live servers anymore, but just treat this as any pillar in any arena, right? Let's just say that you're fighting a DK relatively close to a pillar, and you want to get around that corner right there. If you were to fight this guy, and you don't have sap and you just need to run, if you roll out here and then run behind the pillar, he has a pretty decent chance of death gripping you back if he hasn't. However, if you roll into the corner of the pillar, you get around and out of line of sight a hell of a lot faster. So he might not be able to get that death grip off. So you rolling towards corners will just allow you to get out of line of sight quicker. That's all it does. Next is using your stuns for peels. When people are just trying to chase you down, if they think you're in danger, they will just trinket stuns and stuff. So there's no reason why you shouldn't use your leg sweeps and shouldn't use your Fist of Furies when they're off DR, just so you can peel for yourself. So if you've got leg sweep up, they're not on stun DR, just sweep them. It's 5 free seconds for you. If they were to trinket that leg sweep, then that just means that within the next 2 minutes, they're open to be set up on. You can go for a burst within those 2 minutes, they have no trinket. You're just getting cooldowns from them while you're running. That's all it is. Next, always remember where your Transcendent Spirit is. You always want to keep in mind where your spirit is, because sometimes you'll just place it down somewhere, or you'll forget to place it down, and then you'll go to teleport and be like, where is my spirit? I don't know where it is. It happens to me sometimes as well. If you were to start the arena, and you run in, and you place your port behind this pillar, then you always want to keep in mind that's behind that pillar. Because then if you were to be fighting someone over here and you don't have any mobility, and you're trying to get away and you're trying to crawl over to your port, it will take a while for you to be able to actually teleport, because it's got a 40-yard range. So you always want to keep in mind where it is. If you have to move forward, you should consider maybe changing the location of it. So if you have to fight someone here, you can maybe leave it here. So then in the case where you have to run, you can jump down and then port back up. So always knowing where your spirit is will save you, because there will be times where you've sort of forgotten where it is and you're just spamming the button, but you just forgot where you put it. Or you know where it is, but it's just too far away from your point of combat that you won't be able to get to it. So always be mindful of where it is and if you will have to place it in a different spot according to where you're going. Next, try not to diminish your paralysis. This is a pretty simple one. Paralysis is on a 15-second cooldown, so if you were to use sap on cooldown, it would just constantly trigger diminishing returns. So always make sure that when you sap, they're off the incapacitate DR, so then you're always getting 4-second incaps on people whenever you use it. Sometimes that 2-second difference on your sap can mean the difference between living and dying. But if it's a case of emergency, it's not a bad idea to sap people for half DR. Quarter DR, I wouldn't recommend it. It's probably better to wait. But if you just really need to get that person away from you just for that split second, maybe it's okay. These are decisions that you'll just be making in combat while you're fighting, but generally speaking, it's always better to sap when it's going to last for 4 seconds and not DR off itself. Next thing is called port rolling. Port rolling is actually really good when you're fighting other monks because you unpredictably put your port down again. Let's just say that you've left your port in the middle of this bridge, and then the monk's chasing you and he sees that, and then he puts his port on your port. You run over to this ramp, and then you roll down here behind this pillar. He jumps down, you port up, he ports back up to you, and he's right on top of you. Another example of that, let's just say you've run around this pillar, you're healing yourself, he sees you put your port down, and then you jump down here. He'll run around that pillar, put his port on yours, and then when you port up, he's going to be right on top of you when he ports back up with you. Port rolling is just a really unpredictable way of putting your port down. Let's just say for this example that you've put your port in the middle of the bridge and his is also there. And you've made your way over to here, he runs around here, and you want to get down there. Port rolling looks like this. Now, instinctively, monks are going to roll after you immediately after you run away. So if you place your port down and you roll at the same time, their first instinct is going to be to roll. So then when you port, after they jump down, you'll port over here, they'll instinctively port after you as well, but their port is somewhere else. Port rolling is basically just manipulating their own instincts so that they can't place their port on yours at the same time. This is also pretty handy against warriors. If your port's in a really bad spot, what you can do is you can place your port down, roll over here, he might charge you, and you can port back. The other technique is called jump porting. This is basically just using your serpent kick jump to place your port down and immediately generate distance. And that looks like this. So by jumping, you've immediately generated a pretty significant amount of distance between you and your port. But the main use for this is to place your port at one pillar and get to another really quickly. So where you can do that is like this. Right? So my port is pretty close to that pillar. So now I'm over here. I'm healing up. And then I port over here. You can do this in the grand arena as well. When you've got the 2 pillars on each side, you can swing around one pillar, jump, place your port down at one pillar, and then you'll end up pretty close to the second one, so that when people chase you, you can just swap. It just allows you to replace your port in a good position that's far away from you, and you know where it is because you just put it down, and it's just in a good strategic position. But that's pretty much all the universal tips which I can give. All these things are good in pretty much every single map. There's always going to be some type of pillar, which you can serpent kick around, place your port down next to, and swing around and go to a different one. And when people chase you, you can teleport back. There's always stuff to do like that in pretty much every single arena. Dalaran sewers, you name it, right? Even in Ruins of Lordaeron, there's a way to do that. And when I make the arena specific ones, you'll see that. But yeah, all in all, this is all the universal things that you're pretty much going to have to know if you're kiting people. It becomes really helpful. Whee! One really good way to practice your kiting is if you've just lost an arena, just try and run from them for as long as possible. It pisses them off to no end and you'll absolutely be getting rage whispers at some point. But it's a good practice. It genuinely is good practice. So, all in all, when it comes down to kiting, it's just a combination of you being conservative, playing smart, and just keeping them under your control for as long as you possibly can. Just keep on stunning them, keep on CCing them, get their trinkets, and eventually you'll be able to turn the tides and maybe win against them. If it's a one-on-one situation, monks are actually very good at that. 2-on-1, it's a little bit harder to do, but again, whenever you're in a situation where you've lost the arena, just run, practice, see how long you can live. It's really good for you. But anyway, hope this was helpful. Ask me any questions if you got any, let me know if this helped you, and yeah, catch you guys later.